Hey guys, welcome to a new movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Rambo film, Rambo Last Blood. This is the fifth Rambo film in the Rambo franchise. I've personally been a big fan of the original First Blood back when that first came out in the 80s. Believe it or not, I wasn't a big fan of Rambo 2 or Rambo 3 when those were released. Obviously, I wasn't even alive yet when those were released, but as I grew older and kind of caught up on Sylvester Stallone's filmography, I just remember not really caring for the second and third one too much when I got around to seeing those. I think I was about 18 years old when the fourth Rambo film came out, just called Rambo. Really liked the fourth one. And I was just kind of interested in seeing what they could do for a fifth time. You know, this is definitely more so an old man Rambo, even more so than the fourth one was, because the fourth one was kind of about that too. So it was pretty, in general, I was pretty excited for this movie. I personally like the Rocky series better than the Rambo films, but regardless, I was interested in seeing how this film was going to play out. So, in Rambo Last Blood, you guys, for those who didn't see Rambo 4, and it's really not a spoiler, it's just the setting that this film takes place in, really. Rambo has kind of retired onto a ranch in the U.S. He kind of put the war stuff behind him. After the events of Rambo 4, he kind of just left it behind, as he calls it, put a lid on it, put kind of a, gave it a rest, kind of became his own person, went back and kind of made himself about family again and things like that. So things are all fine and dandy for a while. His niece comes and visits him at the end of a summer one year, and she tells him that she's going to go to college, and she hears about the whereabouts of her father since she never really knew who the father was. Obviously, John Rambo knew who it was since that's his niece, and obviously that probably is like his brother or something like that, or some form of relative that he knows about. So the niece finds out about the whereabouts of the father and decides to go to Mexico to kind of track him down and meet him and kind of figure out why the father was never really a part of her life and things like that. So John is really against this, really does not want her to go. She goes anyway, and really bad things happen. She gets kidnapped. These guys are really treating her horribly. They're setting her up to be a prostitute and all these really bad things. So John Rambo eventually figures this out. He puts the pieces together. He finds out the address of the dad in Mexico and things like that. And so he goes down there, and he has to basically rescue the niece. But things get really bad. He gets hurt himself down there. And so there's an all-out war between John Rambo and this Mexican cartel that took his niece. And it's up to John Rambo to kind of seek his revenge on the horrible things that they did to his niece and the horrible things they've done to him while he was down in Mexico. So overall, guys, I liked this film. I didn't love this movie. I certainly don't think it's the best Rambo we've ever gotten. I really do believe First Blood and the fourth Rambo film from 2008 are probably my two favorite Rambo movies. I liked this movie. This film did a little bit more about John Rambo's PTSD than the fourth film did. So that's one aspect about the old man Rambo part of the story that I thought was better this time around. But the film kind of lacked other areas that really made that fourth Rambo film much better than this one. So let's talk about some positives and negatives of why I liked Rambo Last Blood, but I wasn't completely in love with it, why it is kind of a problematic film at the same time as well. So for my positives of Rambo Last Blood, seeing John Rambo at peace I thought was really unique and really different. I liked seeing more of a peaceful family man side to John Rambo. I thought that was very refreshing for a Rambo entry. So seeing John Rambo at peace, seeing him live on this ranch, seeing him kind of reconnecting with family, I thought was a very unique way to approach a Rambo movie. And like I said, another positive in the movie was I liked the family side of John Rambo, really making sure his niece is okay, really making sure that his family is kind of on good terms with him again after being away for so long, because even in the first four Rambo films, he really was not close to family at all. So seeing that side of John Rambo, I thought was pretty refreshing for the most part. I also thought the first two acts of this film were very thrilling for the most part. For the most part, it really was about this girl finding her dad and kind of the troubles she had, getting down there and finding out that the dad's really not the person she was hoping she was going to find, and John Rambo getting down there himself and looking for the niece and things like that. I thought the first two acts of this film were very thrilling, very well done. Definitely the better parts of this movie. One complaint that this film actually got that I thought was much better handled than people are giving it credit for is the elements of the film that are borrowing from the movie Taken with Liam Neeson. I thought those elements of this film were actually handled in a very unique, different way It really is. I mean, there's elements of Taken here. There's elements of Home Alone. There's elements of a couple of other films here. But I thought this film took what Taken did and kind of did its own thing with it. It really is a very different movie. I think if you were to watch Taken and this new Rambo film back to back, they really are pretty. Yes, they have similarities if you really nitpick them, but I thought both films kind of did their own thing with the whole kidnapped family member thing really well. So I thought this film, it took something that we're familiar with and did something very unique with it. So I thought that was one aspect of the film that I thought was actually good rather than bad like what people were saying about it. I also thought the two villains of this film were very terrorizing and very scary. The two villains that they had for this movie that were a part of this Mexican cartel, they were very scary guys. They did really horrible things if you messed with them, if you took what was theirs, because basically they viewed the niece as kind of their prostitute. So if you took their prostitute and messed with them in the wrong way, they had no problem coming after you and killing you and hurting you and doing really horrible things like they did to John Rambo in this too. So I thought the two villains that they had in this film were very terrorizing and very scary for this movie. I also liked how a lot of First Blood elements had a return in this movie. They do, the PTSD side of Rambo is here. It's not as in full as I was hoping it was. It's not quite on the same level as First Blood was in the first movie, but for the most part, there is more elements here of John Rambo kind of remembering the war and approaching a really scary situation and kind of remembering a very scary time in his life and things like that. So I thought there was more First Blood elements this time around than, let's say, Rambo IV did. For my negatives of this movie, though, by the time the film reaches Act 3, because like I said, Act 1 and Act 2 are my favorite parts of this movie, by the time we reach Act 3, I feel like there's almost no storyline at all. It really is just violence and killing and villains dying off and just kind of things you would kind of expect with a Rambo movie. It just kind of, everything I was worried this film was going to become kind of happened by the third act. So I thought by the third act of this film, there really is no story beyond that point. It really just kind of stops at the end of Act 2. So Act 3 is just violence, violence, and more violence, unfortunately. Another negative I have with the movie is when the film tries to make you kind of feel like you're in Mexico, they'll go back from speaking English to subtitling Spanish, back to English again, back into subtitling Spanish again. And for me personally, it kind of came off like, oh, okay, you're probably sick of reading subtitles by now, so they'll just speak English from here on out. It's just like, it didn't really have any flow to it. It really just kind of like, okay, we'll stop talking Spanish here. Now we'll do English. Now we'll do more Spanish again. Now we'll do more English. Now we'll do more Spanish again. And it just kind of, if they're going to do Spanish, do all Spanish. I don't care if I have to read a million subtitles. I mean, if we're in Mexico, make me really believe I'm there. So I thought rather than going from English to Spanish, English to Spanish, English to Spanish again, really just choose one or the other. Don't just go back and forth, and just kind of assume that I'm sick of reading subtitles and go back to English. So I thought there was some certain parts where that felt really lazy, and it didn't feel very smart on the screenwriting behalf of the movie, but maybe just me personally, it felt to me like, oh, they're probably sick of reading subtitles, let's just go back to English again. So that was one aspect of the film that kind of bugged me a little bit. I also thought, even though the PTSD side of John Rambo is here, they could have done a lot more with it. I liked when they did it, but I didn't like when they completely ignored it too. So I thought that aspect of the film needed to have more of that. Definitely more First Blood than, say, Rambo 3 or Rambo 4 or anything like that. So I thought that aspect of the film was kind of lacking in that area. Paz Vega from Spanglish has a role in this movie. She was one of the main characters in that movie with Adam Sandler. She has a role in this movie, and I liked her character, and I liked when she's in the movie and involved with the movie. I thought her character had no exit. She literally just disappears from the movie at one point, and we just never hear or see from her again. And it's kind of the reason why Rambo was doing what he was doing by the time he's down there. And obviously there's a whole subplot I can't get into without spoiling anything that involves her and Rambo. But I thought her character had no exit, and it was just really annoying. I left the theater kind of wondering what happened to her character and things like that. There's really no exit for her. She's just kind of done with in the movie. So I thought that aspect of the film was very lacking as well. Also, for being an end of the franchise, quote-unquote, at least that's what the trailers are marketing this film to be, it just kind of felt like another Rambo story. So it felt like there could possibly be one more of these potentially down the road. Um, I don't know. I really don't know what they could do for a sixth Rambo movie if they do choose to do another one. So for me, for being an end of the franchise kind of movie, it kind of didn't feel like that. It just kind of felt like another entry in the franchise. So I thought that aspect of the film was very lacking as well. There were a couple of nods to earlier Rambo films, but I thought one thing Rambo IV did was definitely acknowledge the things that happened before that movie occurred. I thought that film did it better than this movie. This film just kind of felt like another Rambo installment. Didn't really nod to the earlier films all that much, and it just kind of happened. So I thought that aspect of the film could have been better as well, just kind of acknowledging those earlier films more. So I'm going to give Rambo Last Blood an 8 out of 10. It's good when it's good, but it's really not good when it's really not good. So there's things about I like seeing John Rambo at peace. I like the first two acts of the movie. The villains are very convincing and scary in the movie. Certain elements of First Blood are here, even though there could have been more of them. But there's really no story by the third act. It's just complete violence by that point in the movie. The whole subtitles to English thing was really annoying to me, kind of shuffling those around a lot. It really needed more PTSD elements of the movie to make it work better. I really wish Paz Vega's character could have had a better exit than she did. It didn't really feel like an end of the franchise kind of movie to me, and I really would have liked to have seen more nods to the earlier films in the franchise. So, 8 out of 10 for me. I liked Rambo Last Blood. Not amazing, not the best Rambo film ever made or anything like that, but it's good enough, and kind of wish it could have been better, but I liked it overall, though.